This was a thrilling day to watch you coach Rubies. It was a great honor and a pleasure. Everybody learned a tremendous amount. Great detail, great facility, absolutely lucid and wonderful. Nobody can look at Rubies without seeing your image and thinking of you and everything you brought to that ballet.
Thank you.
And I know by this time Balanchine had made several roles for you. And I wonder if you could tell us, by this point in your career, with him young as you were, both what you thought his image of you was in this ballet, what you thought he was trying to get from you in this ballet. I know Valella has talked about you being a showgirl and a showman. Maybe a little bit about what kind of a departure dancing to the Stravinsky was for you.
I really don't know what I appeared to be or what he thought of me in it. You know, what he wanted. I just tried to copy him as much as I could and try to find the style, which was a departure from the usual thing that I've worked with him before. The ballets that I did, like Tarantella before, Harlequinade came before. It was very contemporary in its day. You know, off balance, very hippie, very jazzy. But I think he took Eddie and I together because we worked so well together, and he's done so many beautiful things for us before this, that it was so comfortable, and he felt like he knew me. I was 16 when he knew me when I joined the company. So I always felt like he was my father figure, and I always wanted to impress my father. I don't know what he expected. I just tried. I did feel very glamorous and showgirl, I must say.
You looked at
You know, I tried to have that
glamorous, but
feel
playfully glamorous.
And playfully. But it wasn't all the time. And I know he didn't want me to be the same all the time. Like I knew the second movement. I know he told me to be angry in it when we start the pas de deux. So, and it's not cute and smiling and playful like the other movements.
Angry, all of you, or just angry
no,
legs?
Just angry legs, but you had a temperament. It was, you were very different. I mean, it's always a joy when your name goes up for a new ballet. I was just thrilled, and to be with Eddie was amazing. It was amazing because we did have a wonderful partnership for more than 10 years. And we did many ballets, not only the ballets that were choreographed for us, but the rep. And I mean, it was so extraordinary. And he already had started the Emeralds, which the buzz was fantastic for the Emeralds. Everyone said, oh, it's such a masterpiece. And what is he going to do with Stravinsky? And I was so excited to dance something very contemporary, very neoclassic. Balanchine partnered me in everything, and then I would do it with Edward.
So in the room while he was creating, he would partner you and demonstrate for you.
Show, and then
show you.
I remember doing this pull away.
The leans. He did that with you.
Everything.
And he danced your part for you, so to speak,
part,
including the glamour girl cheesecake poses in the last section.
He kind of let me do some decorating myself.
And
he said, "Oh, maybe you can do this," but he wasn't really very specific. But he showed so beautifully. The roadmap was right there, just seeing him, to see him, how he did it and how he phrased the musicality. I mean, he was the master. And
what about the little cat paw things?
Oh,
can you tell us about
this
those?
one?
Yes. Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, you know, there was a step in the finale, this da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. And I know one day I thought, well, maybe I could bring my arms this, or the PKs at the end, to do it with this. And I tried it because I did like a regular pirouette, and I said, oh, let me try it. So I did this, and he, you know, let me do it. So it became
when
like
you
a
showed it to him,
piece.
he liked it.
Well, because it's in the ballet, in the finale. All the girls do this one, which I think is so great. And sometimes I remember I did, I think in Brahms Schoenberg, and he did a lift, and I was supposed to land forward, but naturally I just fell back. And then he said, oh, do that, that looks good, like you do, da-da-dum, da-da-da, back. And it was just, he always goes for the most natural way. He never thought, now what can I do to make this inventive? He never needed that because he had so much genius and invention the movement and the musicality, and it's very knee turn in, lots of hips, hip movements. You had to go kind of beyond and take it a step further. And he always liked you to do your maximum. He'd say, do it 100%, and if you fall, it's okay. But then you've done as far as you go. But if you're timid and you hold back, you're never going to see.
It was clear you were giving and trying to get maximum energy at every point from the dancers you were working with today.
Yes, and we all did it in his class, though. And his classes would prepare you for what you would be doing in his choreography also.
Was he doing things in class at this time that he was doing Rubies that you felt, oh, that's in class and that's going into the ballet?
Yeah.
Can you remember what they were?
Did. I don't remember, but we've noticed sometimes he would sometimes experiment with steps that he might do in ballets. But, you know, he always knew what the women could do on point. And I was telling this with someone, I think Johnny Clifford told me, he had said, oh, you know, Mr. B, you know, how did, I was always fascinated how a man would know what was possible and not with the point shoes. And when he was a student at the Mariinsky, and he would look in on the women's classes, and he was like fascinated with how the women would work on point. So that's probably how he has such a mastery. It interested him. And somehow the articulation of the legs and feet, like he'd love you. He would teach sometimes 2-3 hour classes when I first joined the company to like set the standard, and he would teach us every day.
I know that there are many changes in many ballets over the years, and I heard you say during this coaching session, oh, what do they do now? Oh, that's what I did. Oh, that's changed.
Yes.
And sometimes, oh, somebody put that in and it must have been kept. Could you talk about a little bit about the evolution of the ballet in that way, and specifically about the change that took place in the pas de deux? It's about maybe a couple of minutes. It's after the collapse and the rebalance and the little promenade, and then you used to go off and do. You said you loved it today.
Yes,
you
I
loved
love the old version.
Could you talk about it and talk about how it? I used to think it had been changed for another dancer after you, but that's not the case. Is
no,
that so?
It was made. It was when Eddie Villela left the company. And then I believe it was Ricky Weiss, and he just wanted to, he always felt that I was late getting off. He wanted me to get off earlier before the boys solo. So he started doing that. It's
a little
choreographed
simpler now almost. Would you think that's fair or not fair?
I think it's more complicated actually.
Now.
Because he's got this heel step, you know, which we did a sort of, there's a fun tango in it that I loved. It was so much fun to get into it. It was simpler.
And you had a sort of quick reversal of direction in his arms, from over his arm into a penché. There were a lot of references.
You flipped over the back. There was a chassé, double pirouette, penché arabesque.
Yes, but then I remember the arabesque, and you would roll down so beautifully from point, which is one of the things that makes us think of you all the time in this role, that you would come down off point to flat foot so beautifully in a penché.
Well, I don't know. Mr. B's training, it's all his training, you know. He made me the ballerina I am because by giving me all sorts of different kinds of roles, I felt very lucky to have had, you know, he shaped me as a dancer by what he gave me. But I also evolved in it, because you grow and you learn. Even when you get, you know, to be a mature ballerina, you still are learning and growing and find things. So I also evolved in it, but what didn't change was the musicality.
Right. In what way did you evolve? What kind of things
I don't
changed
know. Sometimes some of the rhythms maybe got stronger. You were more daring. As the time went on,
you became more
and
daring.
You felt daring. You know, and I did a long time, and it wasn't technically really difficult.
It is not technically difficult?
It was not technically difficult, but it was stamina. It was really, and actually, you know, there was a section that we did opening night, and then he took it out in the third movement.
Why did he take it out?
But he said, he came up to, and I think I was turning purple, but in the,
that's a good reason.
Like at the very end, like Eddie and I, we usually we stayed on stage. We made our first entrance, and stayed on dancing and then ran off.
Oh.
So he allowed us, he said, I'm going to change. You just run off, on this step. Run off, wait for the silent 4. There's a silent 4 that the corps does. It goes, and then they start the pinwheel, the circle where they're, the corps is doing all those sautés around that. And then we come on in the 5th 8.
So he gave you a little break.
He gave us a break.
Time to breathe.
And he said,
first.
I even made this too hard for you.
One of the things about this ballet is that it has so many departures from straight up classicism, which are so witty and so funny. You kept using the word quirky today. And there are things that are not, for example, that step you called the karate chop. I always thought that she looked like she was hurling her leg like a javelin at him. And I want to ask you about how hard it is to pass on these things that aren't purely, obviously ballet moves to young dancers today, because it seems to me that's the hardest stuff. They have the hardest time getting that.
It's true, and it just takes time. It's like you can't just do it in an hour. You have to do it every day, and after about a week, they feel it in their bodies and they love it. It just takes a little more time when they're not used to doing that.
Were these movements sort of shocking to you when he started asking for these? You said tap dancing, tango dancing, showgirl cheesecake stuff, throwing her leg like a karate chop.
Well, it was Mr. Balanchine, and you would do anything. You trusted him and he trusted us. He also trusted Eddie and I to retain the choreography and to remember it, because his speed of working was quick. The way he would choreograph it is the way it would take me time to teach someone a firsthand. So I remember saying, oh, Gordon Belsner, he would work, and he was our pianist, who is Mr. Balanchine's right-hand man. And he would go with Gordon, and they'd be playing the music. And I'd say, Gordon, write that down on the score, just so we don't forget. I was always afraid that I wouldn't remember it and retain it, so I would, go over and over it. Because we didn't have the score, and we only had the piano,
right? And
we hadn't heard it. But we did every day, a little bit every day. And Mr. Balanchine never, like an hour or 2 was a lot to rehearse with him, but he get everything done so quickly.
And there were no points at which he had to walk away and come back. I think you said he had to do that when he made Brahms Schoenberg on you. There was a point where he said, I'm not sure what to do, and walked away and then came back.
He walked and he took a week off and then came back, and everything flowed. That was the only time I felt in the whole time that I worked with him, when he was choreographing, that not he was stumped, but it didn't work for him with what I was doing.
But with Villela in this ballet, this seems to be kind of the culmination, I believe, of your partnership with him. And you have this sense of sparring equals. You're almost Tracy and Hepburn. You're on equal terms. The partnering is all strange. She's off balance, but she's on her own also. And that's so different from, let's say, the role you did, the romantic role with Conrad Ludlow. Could you talk about these, especially the quality of this partnership in Villela? Does it come from you being more equal in size? Does it come from his personality, your personality? Where does this come from?
I always loved Edward in my heart. I just always loved him, and I was 17 when I first danced with him. And we did my first big role when I was 17 was Third Movement Symphony in C with Eddie. And I just loved him because I'd go to the ballet and see him. He was a star of the ballet, and I came in and I said, what a thrill. And he was so sweet. He just smiled, and he'd give me such confidence. And he was never nervous. I was always a little, and he'd smile, and everything was fine. And that's how we would laugh in rehearsals. We had wonderful chemistry. We know each other so well. I could just throw myself, be crazy, and he'd be there to catch me. Anywhere I know I could trust him.
How did this ballet change for you when partners changed then? I mean, with Peter Schalfe, Sib Anderson, Baryshnikov, how did that change?
Well, it's always, the chemistry is so different with each person. And you always love your partners and trust them. And because it was something that I had done for years, I would try to help the younger dancers who came in to help them You know, so I'd say, push me a little here, or do this a little here. And I had wonderful partners throughout my career. I loved each and every one of them. They all gave me something special.
The counts in this are astonishingly
I know.
complex.
Did you ever know when you watched it? Or
No,
when you see
I
in
was hearing
rehearsal,
you count
you have
it,
to count
and
it right away.
The counts are long and hard, and as you said, something important is happening on every count at some point. And I think Lauren was asking you, how do I know where to accent it exactly? And where do I put the accent? Because it can't be the same. So is that something you came to feel? Was that something he demonstrated?
He showed
Absolutely?
me. I mean, it was there. I never saw what was behind me, but it's astonishing, the rhythms and the counterbalance of what the group is doing and how the principals work. And there's a very tall girl who does amazing things, and what he did for her it was Patricia McBride originally. And I always just worked hard and tried to do what Mr. Balanchine wanted. I just wanted him, you know, he was the one person. I think we all danced for him.
When you're setting this ballet now in young dancers, when I've seen other companies do it, non-Balanchine companies especially, it seems to me there's a great tendency to verticalize and balleticize everything. Do you find that is?
I do. I've seen that. And sometimes I want them to just let it go. So
I can't count the times you were saying, use your hips, use your torso, use your whole body.
Torso. It's just using the whole torso. It's very, when you think of it, it's, you know, they're doing contemporary now. There's so much contemporary dance now, contemporary ballet. And it's hard to get the dancers to move that way, and Balanchine was doing it 50 years ago.
Exactly, and this ballet was wild
you
and
have to
incredibly
really
contemporary in its time.
You have to be so precise on the music and use the accents in the music that he used.
Even the very beginning of the pas de deux, the first moments when you tap your point right against the floor and you smack your foot, you make noise when you do it, which is wonderful. And I, to me, it says, here are my beautiful feet, for one thing, and now I know your angry legs. And again, that seems something that younger dancers or non-Balanchine dancers almost think is, what, a rude thing to do with your feet? I've watched many companies do this.
I didn't think about always trying to look pretty. I tried to be more in the spirit of the accents. You know, you don't know what you look like when you're dancing. You know how you feel, but you can't really see yourself in the mirror. You look at yourself in class, or you look at yourself in rehearsals, but you have no idea what you're doing out there on stage. You're just living for the moment, and the moment is over, and then you do it again, you do something. And
there's one little step I'd like to ask you about, because I've seen it done differently, and it's the same step but with a different inflection, and that's just after the collapse and he lifts her up by the armpits. Is that when I see dancers do it, it's a real balance and then tendu back. As I recall, you just pass through it into like a deep fourth instead of tendu back. Do you pass through that, or is that, ta-da, here I am, a showgirl making a balance?
I don't think it matters. I think at the beginning I didn't balance. I just went up and I made a big plie, a big fourth.
A big fourth,
But then I started balancing at the end. I thought, oh, that's fun.
So that wasn't something he told you to do, or not, didn't tell you to do?
No, he didn't. And I just did it, and I think people sometimes focused on it. Or I know I saw a company doing RUBIES, and I thought, it wasn't an American company, but I saw it in Europe, a tape of it, and I thought, it's all about whizzing around and doing pirouettes. It's not about the style, you know, like the Balanchine style of using the hips forward and back. It's not about the rhythm and the joy of dancing and the joy of doing the steps, you know, and making accents and not being afraid to look quirky or
make a noise.
It shouldn't look like, oh, I'm balancing. It should be like you're breathing, living, and then you go, and you know, it shouldn't be like, because Mr. B wouldn't like that to stay long. He never wanted us to balance on stage. But it should be free. It should be free and have a fun time and enjoy yourself. And I think most people who do it love it. I know when I've staged it and people say, oh, it's my favorite ballet. I just love it so much. And that makes me feel good.
I bet.
And passing on passing on to the younger generation is so wonderful. It just takes time.
As you speak and as you demonstrate today, there's such a fascinating combination of his setting things exactly with these precise counts and knowing exactly where the accent is.
True.
And then you would say, oh, there he didn't tell me what to do. There I could do what I wanted. I was just waiting at the side of the stage.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
You were free to play.
Tiny little things. I would not take liberties that way. I respected Mr. Balanchine's art too much,
sure.
and I feel that I wanted to preserve it. But you have to be yourself in it also. Have the freedom.
Well, you clearly had both. When Eddie Villela was here talking about Rubies, he spoke about horses, as you know.
I know.
And he didn't.
He did this
I'm not
prancing,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, the prancing.
The
He said
prancing.
prance, prance,
'Cause
prance.
I did a lot of prancing.
And he said that, and I think he said this was his point of departure, was his phrase. It helped him to have images like this. He
okay.
said, I don't know, and I'd
That's
love to know
good.
if it ever came from Balanchine, but he said you were the escaping filly and he was the jockey, and he even called you Patty McBride. So
Oh, no.
did he, or did Mr.
I
and
never
you-
heard that.
Really? All right.
No, because that was a Balanchine, Mr. Balanchine story in, in Saratoga Springs. And we danced every year in Saratoga Springs, a beautiful amphitheater where the company, we were in residence for a month there. We do 4 weeks. And we would get very cold evenings, and it was so cold the audience would have their coats on. And so Mr. Balanchine bought blankets for every dancer. And he had our wardrobe mistress, Sophie Pormel, Madame Pormel, made names for each of us. And Balanchine was so witty. He loved making a play on words. So he made names for everyone in the company, and I was pertaining to the horses. So I was McBridle Pat. McBridle Pat. So it was sewed on. So maybe that's where Eddie got it from. I always felt like a showgirl. I know I was prancing with my legs, but Mr. Balanchine never told me
Never
that.
brought up the Lippin's-Honors
No, I always
vis-a-vis this ballet? You're a showgirl.
Felt
So
like a
you did feel that
showgirl.
a little bit, yeah.
The femininity. I always thought that Rubies the woman is strong, but she's very feminine. And the male is the powerhouse. You know, I mean, it's so fabulous with it. And we had such passion together dancing it. We just loved it equally together. But he was such a charismatic dancer, and he would look in my eyes, and that's all I needed. You know, he would, it was so, and I always got that from my partners. I needed that to feel complete.
A direct contact on the stage.
Yes, I just loved it.
You did, I noticed, turn the dancers toward each other and engage them with each other at certain times during the coaching. Look at each other.
Yeah. Think of all the choreographers of today who have learned and were influenced by Mr. Balanchine. He's with me every minute, every day. If I'm teaching class, it's always his theory. It's so beautiful, and it has so much passion and beauty.
Absolutely.
And femininity. It's still relevant.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the ballet is alive and well.
Perfect place to end there.